Could L catch Epstein?
It would take Elle less than 5
Lock in.
minutes to solve the Epstein case. And
5
that's me being
minutes?
generous. Let me break down exactly why, and more importantly, how. Spoiler alert,
Why does he
I'm
sound
also
like
going to bring
chat?
up
Why does the guy in the video sound like L?
Light Yagami, so you absolutely need to watch till the end of the video. First, we'll power scale L to understand the depth of his genius. You see, in the world of Death
Chat,
Note, the three
if you
greatest...
chat, if you think about it, if you think about it, chat, if you really think about it, chat, if you really think about it, like when you think about it though, after you thought about it, when you really think about it, chat, L. I'm sorry, that was such a rage bait funk. Chat, L had to persuade the world that demons existed. Yo, he had to prove to the world and persuade them that this other person is killing people using genuine supernatural means. Like, bro.
detectives on Earth,
That's
Elle,
mental.
Geraldo
See you later,
Coyle,
Kevin.
and Denev are actually all the same person. And this man has been at the top of the global investigation scene since he was only 8 years old.
8 years old.
Which is when he single-handedly prevented World War III. Now, the public record says he solved over 3,500 difficult cases, but the real number is significantly higher because of those alternate identities. To give you an idea of the scale he operates
Chat, he's
on,
low-key
Mello,
tough.
one of his successors, once mentioned that L maintains at least triple-digit active codes for various detective personas. Still, if you want the one intelligence feat that's relevant here,
Bro,
it's this.
Quick question, chat. When he says catch Epstein, when are you live tomorrow? Around 8 p.m. UK time? Chat, when he says catching Epstein, does he mean like put him in prison or what?
Back when his rogue successor, Beyond Birthday, created a crossword puzzle so complex that an entire team of policemen gave up on it, and even the elite FBI agent Naomi Misora thought it was designed to be
Fine
impossible.
shit, by the way.
Elle solved
Chat,
it
fine
instantly.
shit.
And Beyond Birthday is not a
Chat,
fraud. He is
Asian
the
girls are
primary
so hot.
antagonist of the Los Angeles BB murder cases novel, and he's genius enough to act as Elle's evil clone. When he tried convincing Naomi that he was actually Elle, he read a 376-page book in under 5 minutes and memorized every page perfectly. Now,
Wow.
if he's pulling off feats like that and Elle is superior to him, you can imagine what Elle's photographic
Elle will
memory
catch
looks like.
Epstein
So
in
when I say Elle can solve the
a
Epstein case
minute.
in 5 minutes, I'm not being hyperbolic. If anything, I'm being conservative. This man processes information faster than entire government investigative bureaus combined. He can monitor dozens of computer screens simultaneously and absorb
So
every
how did
data
Light
point
beat him?
perfectly. And because he immediately understands every data point, he can weigh every probability in real time and calculate precise percentages in his head. But here's where it gets tricky. I'm sure that you can
Hold
already
on,
tell
walk in.
that superhuman genius alone isn't enough to solve the Epstein problem.
Yeah, chat, because you got to think about the fact that Epstein will get him killed.
You see, L is a detective. Yes, he's the top one detective, but he's limited in what he can do. His whole
Bro,
thing
stop
is
counting
narrowing
every time I
down
pause.
suspects in closed systems. But how does that work with Epstein? The way Epstein operated has been well documented since at least 2005. The real problem was never a lack of evidence. It was that too many people in power were either compromised or complicit. Having said that,
Bro, Stephen Hawking is crazy. Chat, every time I see Stephen Hawking in these pictures,
was
bro,
that too many people in power were
Bro.
either compromised or
what was he doing? Like, what was Stephen Hawking doing at Epstein's Island, bro? Like, actually...
complicit. Having said that, let's see how this actually plays out. The year is 2005. March
The
2005 to be precise. A stepmother contacts the Palm Beach police because her 14-year-old stepdaughter came home with $300 in cash. When she asked the girl about it, she ended up
Okay, chat,
explaining
hold
the
on.
entire
We're getting warnings on TikTok, bro. Because apparently the content's unsafe. We might have to end the TikTok live because it's not safe.
recruitment pipeline. Basically, a classmate had approached her at school and offered her money to give an older man a massage. The classmate drove
What the hell, bro?
her to
Go
a
to
pink
the
mansion
police.
at 358 El Brillo Way. Once in, Epstein entered wearing nothing but a towel. And I'll spare you the details, but to make a long story short, she walked away with $300. Now at first, this looks like a case of a local rich pedo creep. Nothing about it suggests you're dealing with a man
Nah,
who
but
has
this is
billion-dollar financial leverage,
we're
a
talking
global
about.
contract list, and 2 decades of cultivating relationships with
This is
presidents,
L.
royalty, and prosecutors. But by October 2005, Detective Rick Harry was interviewing victim after victim, and the pattern was identical every single time.
L
Girls
would
would
catch
get
on to this
recruited by their
fast.
friends. They'd be driven to the same mansion, asked to give a massage, but as you can expect, it would often escalate to God knows what, and then they'd get money. And here's the thing, once a girl was in, she was in. She'd be pressured to bring more girls, which is how the network just kept expanding. And Epstein was particular about them being young. So, okay, Rick Harry built his case methodically. He collected
couldn't the
everything
girls
from
just
property
snitch on him? I
records
don't know,
proving
Charlie.
Epstein owned the mansion, to flight logs showing travel between Palm Beach, New York, New Mexico, and Little St. James Island in the Caribbean. Not to mention witness statements describing the same housekeeper, the same
He's
recruitment
actually
methods,
so
the
creepy
same
every
cash
time I see
payments.
him.
He documented everything.
By May 2006, Detective Joseph Ricari submitted a comprehensive probable cause affidavit to the Palm Beach County State Attorney's Office. It was the culmination of an 11-month investigation and clearly had overwhelming evidence for direct charges. But rather than
So
filing
why did he not get charged for this? Why did he not get charged for it?
charges based on Ricari's affidavit, State Attorney Barry Krischer took the case to a grand jury, and the grand jury returned a very limited indictment. And as we know, it ultimately led to the controversial 2008 non-prosecution agreement. Now, why am I bringing all this up? To show you just how much was known even back in 2005. Plus, for this scenario, we're
They
going to
tried to
assume
hide it
Elle
from
gets
him.
a chance to look at Ricari's affidavit in May 2006. We know the Death Note anime came out in October 2006, right? Well, even though the manga came out much earlier, for this scenario, let's just say that the main story of Death Note took place between 2006 and 2007. So this would be a few months before Light picks up the Death Note. And here is exactly how Elle solves it within 5
Wait,
minutes.
Chad,
He
do you think Light would have killed Epstein with the Death Note? Surely, right? The problem is, I do think Light would have killed Epstein with a Death Note, but that wouldn't have solved the problem of what he was doing. It would have just killed the man at the top. Someone else would have replaced the head of the snake. You know what I'm saying?
goes through the affidavit, and immediately, within minutes, he solves the case. And I don't mean the way Ricari did. No. Elle goes much deeper. He connects the dots and realizes
Is he
instantly
connected
that
to the
Epstein's
Death Note?
ring
Well,
is
it's like
global.
the
He
ma- it's like
sees
a regular-
that it
it's like the regular
implicates
world,
a
isn't it?
stupid number of powerful people. We're talking billion.
Nah, Light became an evil man himself, bro.
Billionaires, government officials, presidents, royalty, and more. Plus, Elle also figures out that Epstein is systematically collecting blackmail material on all of these powerful figures for a specific country that just popped up in everyone's...
Oh, hold on. Where's this going? Hold on. Ooh, chat, hold on. Where's this going? Hold on.
all of these powerful figures for a specific country that just popped up in everyone's head. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into specific names or the countries involved.
I personally do think Epstein was a Israeli spy. I believe that theory.
To keep things straightforward for the video, but basically, Elle realizes that by 2006, Epstein had already been operating for decades. Most importantly, he understands that Epstein currently holds more institutional power and protection
Yeah, bro,
than
like,
even
no one
he
could
does.
harm him.
The #1 detective in the world. Naturally, this also confirms that the Department of Justice and the FBI he works as part of are compromised. This is where it stops being a detective case. You see, in Death Note, Elle commands Interpol, Japanese National Police, FBI liaisons, and the Kira Task Force. He has institutional authority, but that also means he needs the
it's
system
Epstein.
to actually work with him. Now that same system is compromised and complicit, so if Elle plays by the rules, he'll get nowhere, which is why he has no choice but to take matters into his own hands. When the director of the FBI learns that Elle is looking into the files, Elle receives an invitation to Little St. James, the so-called Epstein
Oh my
Island.
God.
By this point, Epstein has owned this island for 7 years.
Yes, Kira is the killer. Yes, this is L the detective.
All right, what now? L is invited. And if you think that's stupid, and you're wondering why on earth Epstein would invite a potential threat like L to his private island,
get
you
blackmail
have
on
to keep
him.
in mind who we're dealing with. This is the same guy who was revealing every bit of information about what he does over Gmail, while most of you out here are using VPNs just to pirate some anime and games. Yes, elites aren't exactly high IQ. So once Epstein
Okay, I thought it
learns
was an
that
ad
the
incoming.
FBI's top detective is finally onto him, his first instinct is to simply invite the guy over. Of course, L knows
I would
exactly
think he's
what the
inviting him
play is
over
going
just
to
for
be,
the
but he still goes ahead
proposition
and
of
accepts the
blackmail.
invitation for two reasons. First, it's because even though he has a sense of morality and justice, his primary motivation is the desire to win, and because of that, he simply can't bring himself to back away from a challenge like this. Second, it's because he can tell exactly why Epstein would invite him in the first place. Now, from the looks of it, it's Watari who makes the trip while carrying a laptop with L connected via voice chat. The second Watari steps off the helicopter, L starts cataloging everything. He notices right away that the staff to guest ratio is crazy. So there are dozens of employees just for a handful of visitors. He sees how every single sightline is controlled, how the security cameras monitor every guest, and how the entire environment is designed for observation.
This is low-key,
and
like,
control.
actually
Epstein
impressive
gives
how
him a
he's
tour,
thought
and
this
then
out.
eventually offers Watari a drink. He accepts a glass of water, and after observing the glass for a split second through the screen, he takes a sip. They sit on the terrace, and at this point, Epstein just goes ahead and comes right out with what he's doing. He explains how he has the most powerful people in the world on camera.
Would Epstein do that though? I don't know. Would I think he.
Went from presidents and royalty to prime ministers, bankers, and scientists. Epstein leans forward, and as L sees the void in his eyes, he reveals that what he and his backers are ultimately seeking is control. Then Epstein extends his hand toward the laptop and offers L a chance to become an equal partner. He wants to use L's brain to help him expand his network so that they can eventually gain control
that
of
I
the
understand.
entire world
Like trying
together.
to get
L
him on his
remains
side.
completely calm while he processes Epstein's specific phrasing and body language through the feed. He can tell that Epstein actually believes this, and that he truly wants to be the invisible hand moving civilization. He can also see that Epstein isn't afraid of him at all. If anything, Epstein is actually excited by him. Now, Epstein was clearly expecting some kind of a big response here, but L stays completely quiet on the voice chat. Then Watari walks back to the table, picks up a few wrapped chocolates, and puts them in his pocket. He just says, "I'll take some for the flight if you don't mind." And with that, he asks a staff member to tell their helicopter pilot that they're ready to leave.
But will he let
moment
him
is
leave?
so absurd and so deliberately
old is L? I'm pretty sure he's a
that
teenager.
Epstein doesn't even know how to respond. He expects a negotiation or a rejection, or maybe even an acceptance. But in all the decades he has operated, he had never experienced a complete dismissal like this. He thought that since L already knew the truth, he could just offer him a partnership. But this is how it went? Little did Epstein know that the reason L didn't respond at the end was because the voice chat was actually a recording. I mean, did I mention that the helicopter pilot is actually L himself? He wanted to physically
Oh my god. That is legit genius. The helicopter pilot is L. Because no one knows what L looks like. So he could just blend in. Oh, that's something you... Bro, that's legit some Death Note shit. What the fuck? I didn't even think of that.
a recording. I mean, did I mention that the helicopter pilot is actually L himself? He wanted to physically observe the island with his own eyes, so he tagged along disguised as the pilot. All the while, his voice recording kept Epstein occupied. Next, as the helicopter takes off, L looks down at the compound, shrinking below him. Okay, what now? If the FBI director is already compromised, and if Epstein's influence
Yeah,
extends
who can
across
he go
multiple
to then?
countries, how is L going to defeat him? It's a problem, especially considering how the longer it takes,
If the
more Epstein's
FBI is
influence
helping him,
going
like,
to
bro,
grow.
what is he
Plus, you
supposed
have
to do?
Remember, this is still 2006, which is well before what happened in 2008. L knows that he has to act right away, so he decides to go all in on the affidavit. He realizes he has to crack everything Epstein has built to neutralize that influence, and that includes making the truth mainstream as early as possible. In our world, it's taken until basically this year for the general public, especially in Western countries, to get
Yeah,
a clear
bro.
idea of what was really going on. But L needs
And,
to get it
and they, by the way, chat, they still haven't released all the files fully unredacted, fully like visible. A lot of the names are still hidden. A lot of the emails are still hidden. Like, it's fucked.
out within 20 hours, not 20 years. He starts by looking into potential journalists who might already be onto Epstein. And while he's reading through the Miami Herald, he finds Julie K. Brown. She's already doing exactly what he needs. In reality, she's the one who eventually got the former police chief and lead detective to talk publicly about how the case was sabotaged. And her series, Perversion of Justice, was what explained how Epstein secured
Marty,
that
chill out,
lenient
bro,
plea
bro, what
deal
the fuck,
in
bro?
2008. Okay, so Elle seeks her out immediately and shares everything he has learned with her. Now, Elle knows that journalists can only do so much. They publish, people read, and then what? Some victims might come forward, but many would be either too afraid or too deep into the system to go public. After all, Epstein reportedly used the phrase, "Those who help him will be compensated, and those who hurt him will be dealt with," to intimidate witnesses into staying quiet. What Elle really needs is
What
to
I think people genuinely need, chat, like, I want to just, like, I want to get all the people who are, like, involved with Epstein and shit, and I just want to ask them publicly, like, what was you doing on the island? Like, no one's asked, like, Bill Gates or fucking all these people, like, what was you doing, bro? Like, impress them about
create
it.
an irreversible cascade of information
People-
that makes the truth
people
impossible
people
to contain.
answer,
He
like,
begins gathering as
differently
much
when they're
data
under
as
pressure.
possible to build a web that includes all the records
They
of
make
flights
mistakes,
on the
they
Lolita
lie, like,
Express, financial donations, and public photos. He makes notes on which individuals were likely there for business, as in financial or political leverage, and which were there for pleasure. Then, for every compromised official like the FBI director, Elle identifies a clean counterpart or a political rival who would love nothing more than to see that person burn. This is obviously easier said than done, and Elle needs help from hundreds of people like Reverie and Julie K. Brown, but once he has enough solid information organized into a digital web, he prepares to make it public through multiple channels. And here's where Elle's genius really shows itself. He knows that if he just dumps everything at once, the story would become too big too fast, and it'll be easier for the general public to dismiss it
forget,
as a
yeah.
conspiracy. Plus, mainstream news outlets would get too many shutdown calls from their powerful friends. So Elle does something counterintuitive. When he's ready to release it, he intentionally leaves out the names of the most powerful people. The initial release focuses entirely on Epstein's trafficking and blackmailing ring, how it operates, how
That's
long
kinda
it had
smart,
been
I
running,
guess.
and how girls were recruited.
can
at
sort of see, like, it
schools. The web
working.
mentions that powerful people were involved. It has to, just to explain the scale, but it doesn't name them. Again, this is to simply make sure that the initial wave of coverage focuses on the crime itself, rather than the politics of naming names. The media runs with it. Within 20 hours, the story stops being a local scandal and becomes global. And that's when Elle makes his second move. He sends anonymous emails to the rivals of every compromised official he's identified, and he sends them the full web. He just gives them the truth and trusts that enough of them,
But,
for
like, what
enough
does he,
different reasons,
what does he mean
will
by
act.
rivals? Are we talking, like, who's Bill Gates' rival? Who's Donald Trump's rival?
Some will act because they have a moral compass. Some will act because they see a massive political advantage. And some will act simply because they're terrified of being implicated themselves. But even after that, Elle is just getting started. The next step is going directly after the names on Epstein's list. Elle anonymously sends a highly sanitized, encrypted message to a select few of the most powerful people on that list. Specifically, the ones he deduced were only there for business leverage. Since they were there for business, it's easier for them to talk their way out of the truly messed up stuff. So Elle's message to them is simple. Mr. Anonymous has all the blackmail material, and they have to cooperate now, or it's a declaration of war. This is how Elle creates absolute paranoia to fracture the network from the inside. As much as Elle wants to
But
destroy
how
the
did-
system, he also wants to win his personal game against Epstein. And to do that, he first has to make Epstein a liability that the system he built can no longer afford to protect. Now, remember how I mentioned that
Chat,
Elle is
13 minutes
all
till
three of the
casting out.
top 3 detectives in the world? That's not public information. To the public, the number 2 detective, Geraldo Coyle, and the number 3, Denev, are completely different people. It's a layer of anonymity that gives him 3 different lives to play with. Another thing to keep in mind is that the web Elle creates isn't omniscient. He doesn't have every single piece of evidence yet. He only has what he's seen or deduced.
Eisen's
The
not as
real
smart as
incriminating
Elle,
evidence
so
only
probably
starts
longer.
pouring in once the story becomes a global incident. Once every major news outlet is on it, the momentum moves faster than anyone can pay to make it stop. This is where Elle makes his move as Denev. He publicly announces that he was the one who leaked the web, and to protect himself, he reveals that he's created a dead man's switch. If he fails to check in once a day, a final unencrypted version of the entire Epstein network file will
bro,
be
this is so
automatically
smart.
released
He's like,
to
yo,
every
this
major
creates a
news
spot of
outlet
everything,
and
bro.
law enforcement agency on the planet. He makes it clear to everyone who is complicit that killing him only makes it worse. And while this looks like an ultimatum, it's actually pure smokescreen to further crack the network. You see, Epstein knows Elle is behind this because everything started falling apart the moment Elle entered the chat. that. However, Epstein's acquaintances, the powerful men backing him, have a different idea. They are not going to go down with him, especially when they realize they can simply launder their crimes through Epstein. And El knows exactly what they're thinking. In his room, he breaks down how Epstein's only
This shit
utility
low-key
to his
tough
backers
facts,
was
bro.
his ability to operate in the shadows. That utility is now gone. He's become a blindingly bright point of light in a scandal that threatens to engulf them all. And because of that, they won't protect him anymore. They'll make him the scapegoat and hope that his conviction calms the public outcry. And it works. Within a month of El getting involved, Epstein is convicted. And El doesn't stop there either. Over the next few months, he gradually releases information about the other offenders one by one and keeps the entire network in a state of terminal paranoia.
I think this is
Naturally,
the
once
least amount of times I've paused something because I'm genuinely so fucking like starstruck by it, like invested low key. Like, bro, this creator, bro, he deserves a follow for this shit, bro. I can't even cap.
it becomes clear that Deneuve would keep leaking information regardless of whether he is dead or alive, the hits start getting called in.
I mean, he did figure it out in 5 minutes, no?
Multiple contracts are put out on both El and Deneuve. This is where one of them seeks out the help of the world's second best detective, Geraldo Coyle. And of course, that is also El. To create a false sense of security, El uses his Geraldo Coyle persona to stage the deaths of both El and Deneuve. It creates a massive wave of public outrage. But the people who hired Coyle are satisfied. But they're wrong. As more arrests are made and the power shifts to the clean counterparts El identified earlier, the old guard begins to lose their grip. Still, many offenders remain untouched because, as a certain student in Japan would say, this world is rotten. And speaking of that student, this is where things peak. About half a year after El visited that island, Light Yagami picks up the Death Note. At this point, the Epstein list is public knowledge. It's the biggest story in the world. So after Light tests the notebook, he starts writing the names of every offender on that list. He strikes his classic pose, looks out over the city and says to himself, this world is rotten, and those who are making it rot deserve to die. Someone has to do it, so why not me? By the end of 2006, the Epstein network was neutralized. Heart attacks for those who were already on trial. Car accidents, overdoses, apparent suicides. One by one, the names on the list drop dead. Epstein's actual backers, the ones for whom he was doing the blackmailing, watch in frozen terror as everything they've built over decades now dies for no explainable reason. Finally, from an unknown location, El watches the news as a reporter announces yet another unexplained heart attack of a high-profile figure. He reaches for a sugar cube as he tries to make sense of it. Someone is cleaning up Epstein's mess with a power that El doesn't understand.
This leads us into a version of El versus Light that we've never seen before. Because this time, El may just agree with Light, or should I say, Kira's reasoning.
Chat, bro, what the hell? That was actually sick. Hey, it's clear you like this video. There's one right here as well. Why don't you watch this one too? Come on, watch it. Press it, bruh.
Yo, this guy pressed the
Well, that's what I'm saying. They ain't pressing it, bro.